This is your Thursday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Lots to get to today. Chip Scoggins will join me in a little bit to talk women's Final Four. Paige Bueckers. Chip was in Bridgeport, Connecticut for the regional where UConn won in thrilling fashion over North Carolina State just a few days ago. And that women's Final Four starts tomorrow in Minneapolis. So Chip and I will talk all things Paige Bueckers, break down the four teams in the tournament, things like that. So hope you enjoy that conversation. Got to get to U.S. World Cup qualifying. They are in. The U.S. men, after missing out on the 2018 World Cup, they are in. Lost 2-0 to Costa Rica last night, but didn't really matter. Just needed to avoid a disaster in that game, a large goal differential, getting them in. Canada wins the group. Mexico right there with them. U.S. third in the group. That is good enough. They were in pretty solid footing throughout all of qualifying, and really that win over Panama the other day really solidified their spot. So get to that in a little bit. Patrick Peterson coming back to the Vikings. He announced it yesterday. The team confirmed it. So we'll get into that a little bit. And Alex Goligoski, interesting timing on an extension for the Wild defenseman. But first, what did I miss? Got to talk Wolves at the jump. Haven't talked a lot of Wolves lately because they're kind of in that stretch of the season where they kind of like, okay, get to the playoffs. We kind of know what this team is. I think we're kind of just waiting for the postseason. And some discouraging moments in the last week. Wolves have lost 4 of their last 5 now against good opponents. We knew they were coming into the stretch of teams against games against quality opponents. They lose to Toronto on Wednesday in Toronto. It ended up being a blowout. The Wolves were up double digits in the first half, but that did not last. Toronto just gets red hot from 3-point range, ends up winning 125-102. Some things from that game stood out to me. It stood out to a lot of people. Karl-Anthony Towns only takes 13 shots in the game. Now, he was in foul trouble. Had 5 fouls in the game. Anthony Edwards took 17, but he was good offensively. He made 10 of 17 shots. Kind of the Ant that we want to see and we're seeing earlier in the year. Big problems though, like I said, were Towns and his shoot and his lack of touches, lack of shots. Didn't get a ton from the bench, although they were okay. But the biggest thing, D'Angelo Russell. We've talked plenty about as the Wolves go, D'Lo goes, and vice versa, and he's not been great. He's probably happy to see March heading out, and Wolves' next game is in April. Tomorrow night against Denver, a big one if they are going ahead to have any chance at moving up to the number 6 seed and avoiding that play-in tournament, which we'll get to in a minute. Month of March, D'Angelo Russell shot just 36.7% from the field, 27.3% from 3-point range. Now, the assists were still fine, averaged almost 8 assists per game, but only 13 points a game in that month, and especially these last 5 games against these good teams, 2 against Dallas, 1 against Phoenix, 1 against Boston, 1 against Toronto, where the Wolves went just 1-4. D'Lo not good, including that 3 for 15 against Toronto, was just 1 for 6 against Boston the other night. Didn't shoot above 37.5% in any of those 5 games. So they got to get D'Lo going. And he's been streaky all year. He kind of gets in these, hot and cold stretches. When he's hot, when he's making shots, they are a different team. And when he's not, they still can overcome it when they're playing the likes of, Orlando, Oklahoma City, Portland, things like that. But when they start playing the better teams, you can't have D'Angelo Russell putting up a 3 for 15, 1 of 7 from 3-point range. I mean, these last 5 games, just counting it up right now, he is 4 for 27 from 3-point range. 4 for 27 from 3-point range. That is not getting it done. They got to get him going before the postseason starts. Now, if there's good news, we watch teams go through these cycles all the time, right? The Wolves were up, down, kind of all year. what's been pretty consistent, I think, is the effort and kind of the belief, even when they're not winning. And, Karl Anthony Towns, even though he was frustrated, you could tell he was frustrated by Wednesday night's game, he did have some good things to say after the game about kind of how they need to get back to the way they were playing earlier in the year, how they can get there, get back to that spot. So let's listen to Towns post game right now.
Just a great coaching staff, a great coach, and guys who are willing to put winning first. I think that we've done that all year. I thought we've played with a great determination this year. I thought we played with a great mindset, and we got to fall back on that right now. We got I don't know how the situation is with the standings and everything. I have to educate myself on that. Either you guys tell me now, or I'll tell myself later. But we're fighting, and these games ain't gonna get any easier. It's going to get much, much harder. So if y'all think that today was tough, when we get to April 14th, it's going to get really, really difficult. So we got to figure out ways how we're going to, expose people boxing wanting me or triple teaming me or, through half court already putting somebody on me. So we got to find ways to counter that. We got time. We got to go to the drawing board. We got games to warm ourselves up for the playoff run and figure out how we're going to do that.
And again, teams go through these lulls. It's just concerning a little bit that it's happening this late in the season and against quality opponents because, like Towns said, this is not going to get any easier, especially if they have to be in that play-in round. You saw the Clippers the other night. They won. Paul George was back. That would be their play-in round opponent. That's who they would play in that 7-8 game to try to get that 7 seed. And if they lost that, then you're in an elimination game probably against either the Spurs, Lakers, or Pelicans, teams you can beat, but that's do or die. That's one game. So then you'd be the 8 seed and you have to play, Phoenix, and, that's good luck with that. So just getting into the playoffs this year is a reasonable goal for this team. I think even before the season started, getting into the play-in tournament was a goal for this team. I think we recalibrated that when we saw what they had, when we saw how they were playing. But they've got some work to do down the stretch here, and they kind of what they've got coming up against them now, in the final stretch of this regular season, and what could come in this play-in tournament, if that's what it comes to. That's going to test them in ways they haven't been tested yet, like Towns said, and it will be interesting to see how they respond to that.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Happy to have back on Daily Delivery today Star Tribune columnist Chip Scoggins, who was out in Bridgeport to witness the greatness of Paige Bueckers, the UConn star, the phenom formerly of Hopkins, had 27 points, I think, a lot of them after halftime, a lot of them when UConn needed her the most to get to this Final Four. Chip, you'll have a lot less to travel to get to watch her next game, because that is in Minneapolis on Friday. UConn, a part of the Final Four, along with Stanford, South Carolina, and Louisville. And Chip, just want to talk to you today mostly about Paige Bueckers. And I know we've talked about her before, but you were out there for this. You've been kind of watching her. You've got a big story on her coming out later this week. As you've kind of observed her greatness, observed this season, which has had its challenges, what stands out to you?
Yeah, Mike, I first met Paige when she was a 7th grader. And I think that's the first, her first year of varsity, and was at the Final Four last year in San Antonio and spent some time around her. And I've seen her a lot, both in high school and college. And the thing that amazes me about her is, you mentioned it, the word greatness. There is this expectation when she walks on the floor that you're going to see greatness. And so often you see more than that from her. I mean, you see these kind of epic moments, and you can go back to junior year. They're undefeated. She'd went undefeated as a sophomore. They were undefeated this year, and she had lost for her first 2 state championship games as a freshman and sophomore, and they were trailing at halftime. She was sick as can be, had the flu. They were down to Stillwater, and everybody was panicking in the locker room. And she stood up and said, "Nah, we're good. We got this." And they go out and just destroy it and win a state championship. The other night, Monday night, UConn has been to 13 straight Final Fours. That streak, which is remarkable, is on the line. NC State's giving them the fight of all fights. They're, home crowd that UConn has, 10,000 people. And when they needed someone to step up, Paige delivers this kind of epic, iconic performance where she scores 23 of her 27 points after halftime, did not miss a shot after halftime until late in the second overtime. 6 of 6 clutch free throw shooting in overtime. Just, she can find a way in those pressure moments to make it look easy. And she just has this gift. I mean, she's just a terrific, as I say, she's a supernova, both in name and game.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing to watch. It's going to be great to see it up close for everybody who's local, who was traveling to Minnesota for the Final Four. The subject of greatness is an interesting thing because, and I talked about this on a podcast earlier this week, but we've had a lot of great athletes in this market. We've watched plenty of them grow up. Joe Mauer, such a greatness on two levels, football and baseball in high school. Even basketball was a pretty good player as well. Probably could have played college basketball at a certain level if he wanted to. You talk about nationally, you look at like LeBron James, you look at, individually great athletes like, Serena Williams or, whatever golfer you want, Tiger Woods at the height of his power. Like the confidence these guys must have, these men and women must have, is kind of beyond what I can really imagine. But how do you, as you're like thinking about the mindset of a Paige Bueckers, does she just expect to be great? And
yes,
and then she just is great because she knows it and she has the skills to back it up.
Yeah, she has the personality where she's just unflappable, and you kind of see it in her body language. I have this story and I've written it before, and I'm gonna have it in my piece on her coming out Friday, the day of the semifinals. But when Paige was in 6th grade, her dad Bob had taken her to a Lifetime Fitness over in Spring Lake Park, or St. Louis Park. I'm sorry, St. Louis Park, and they were working out. And Bob was working out, her dad, and Paige was down there on the basketball court by herself, no one else there. She was just kind of shooting, doing her thing. And Cheryl Reeve, the Lynx coach, who was already a WNBA champion coach by now, happened to be there that day, and she was working out, and she was in between weightlifting sets. She looked out on the court, and she saw this little girl and was mesmerized, could not take her eyes off her because of her body language, the way she moved, just kind of the swagger this kid had as a 6th grader. And Cheryl said, I have to go meet this kid. So she goes up to Paige Bueckers, says, "Hey, I'm Cheryl Reeve." And I don't know if Paige knew she was. She may have did at that point, but Cheryl said, "Would you want me to put you through a workout?" And she's like, "Yeah, great." So she put her through a fast-paced workout for 30 minutes. Her dad, Bob, looked out there after doing his workout, and his daughter's out there with the WNBA coach, put her through an intense workout. And so she just has this presence, this self-confidence that she's going to rise to the occasion. The thing that I marvel at with her is she doesn't overpower people with her athleticism and physical gifts like a LeBron or some of these that are just, hey, I'm just more athletic than you. You can't do anything about it, right? I mean, right. She's got, long arms and quick and good enough athlete, obviously, but it's the way she sees the game. It's the way, the instincts that she has, just the feel for a game. And I don't know that you can coach those things. And I think the really great ones have something about them that you obviously have to have the high-end skill that, to do it, but they have this just innate thing that you can't coach. And I think you see that a lot in Paige's game.
It took a lot just to get to this Final Four. Like you said, that streak was on the line. And, for a portion of this season, we didn't even know if she was going to be able to finish the season. She missed a good chunk of time with an injury. A lot of her teammates did too. So UConn has had more adversity than they probably are accustomed to. But in the end, do get here to Minneapolis for this Final Four. But not the favorite to win. I think that distinction belongs to South Carolina.
Yeah.
And Stanford's awfully good. That's the defending champ, and that's who they will see right off the gate. I mean, this is an awfully good field, like it usually is in the women's Final Four.
It is a great field, and yeah, Bueckers missed 19 games with a pretty significant major knee surgery. Had she been healthy, and AZ Fudd, their All-American freshman All-American, who's great. She missed, I think, 8 games. So UConn was a disrupted season. I think if they were healthy, they would be a team that people would be talking about. But look at this field, Mike. 3 of the 4 teams have won national titles.
Yeah,
they're traditional programs. South Carolina is the program now, start to finish number 1. Stanford, we know their history, and obviously UConn's history. And Louisville hasn't won the national title, but they've been a premier program here. They've won at a high level. They just haven't broken through for the championship. So it's going to be I think it's going to be a marvelous field. And I guess I wouldn't be surprised with any result. Although, if I had to bet on it, I think I would put South Carolina and UConn in the final. I just think those two are playing probably the best right now.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. I think Louisville would be the one team that would surprise me just because they haven't done it yet. They don't have the same history, but they're an awfully good team. It's been a great tournament so far. I mean, I think we saw some upsets early on that we don't usually see. And
sorry to interrupt you. They had a board up at Bridgeport with the bracket, and I think I counted up 9 wins by double-digit seeds. Now, a couple of those was the same team advancing, but 9 wins, which is not atypical. And Gino talked about that. Gino Ariema, the UConn coach, said that they're not obviously at the level in that regards as the men's side yet, where it's just a constant. But he has seen the evolution coming, where there's more depth and more athletic departments that are making a commitment to women's basketball in a way that'll help them. So you're starting to see some of that parity. But in the end, when you get to the Final Four, we got 3 number 1 seeds and a number 2 in UConn that is de facto number 2. They could be a number 1. They just did that because they didn't have Paige Bueckers for 19 games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, so you traveled to Bridgeport, and I mean, and we're, we don't root for athletes, we don't root for teams, but if you're going to root for a story, having Paige Bueckers do what she did in that region final is about all you could ask for, right?
Yeah. We definitely root for stories, and that's what you want. And I think this Final Four, listen, it'd have been a big deal here anyways, because it's a Final Four, and I think women's basketball, you're seeing the strides in popularity, the numbers. The NCAA finally got around to making it March Madness, which is ludicrous that it wasn't before, but TV numbers and just interest, you're starting to see that popularity really grow. However, when you have a Paige Bueckers, a hometown kid who was enormously popular here in high school, do what she did Monday night in that kind of performance, as I called it, kind of an epic, iconic performance, it put a jolt into this tournament. And I'm sure the people at NCAA were thrilled to death when they saw that and knowing that she was going to come here off that performance.
Do you have just a couple more things before we let you go, Chip? Do you have is there a comparable athlete to come out of Minnesota? Because I hate to put labels on people, and I know everyone's their own individual person, but the hype that she has had and what she's lived up to so far, and knowing that she probably at some point will be a number 1 overall pick in the WNBA, should have a long, great WNBA career, start to finish. Who's comparable to her?
The closest thing in it, the parallels that I see were Tyus Jones, because he started in 7th grade and he had this reputation, and he went to Duke and won a national title, and his his freshman season was a one and done. He hit went crazy in the second half of that national title game. And so the difference is Paige has captured this age of social media in a way that Tyus never did, and not very few athletes have. I mean, her following is gigantic. Now Tyus came pre-NIL, name, image, and likeness, so that's the difference. But when you look at her social media platform and how many followers, I mean, Mike, when she was in high school, Timberwolves players went and watched her play.
Right.
She has sponsoring. Gatorade chose her to be the first college athlete, male or female, to sponsor their brand. So in terms of the basketball kind of transition and evolution through high school, Tyus reminds me because they both were young, played a lot of, as this kind of prep phenoms, and then everybody knew them in this town by the time they were junior and seniors. But I think the social media component with Paige is just, it makes hers different.
Yeah, and obviously we've had, on the men's side, Jalen Suggs and Chet Holmgren have been awfully good players in the last 2 years for Gonzaga. Chet Holmgren coming up short to get to the men's Final Four this year. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to accelerate this thing like 15 years, but I want to know to a certain degree also, like, what is this all going to look like at the end of her career? What will we be saying about Paige Bueckers at that moment? Yeah,
well, hopefully, she stays healthy. I mean, that's the one thing you can't. But I do think she has look, basketball, she's terrific. I mean, we've seen that. She's one of the best. She was the number one player in high school, and she was the first freshman in the history of the women's game to be a national player of the year in college. And so if she stays healthy, is she going to be a great WNBA player? Well, by everything we've seen so far, I would say yes. And I just think because of her, and I don't know if this is the right word, but just brand. People know her. I mean, she's selling products. She could, when the NIL passed, a lot of companies rushed to try to get her to sign up to promote them, and she picked and choose who she wanted, and she had 3 big ones now. But I just think she's going to be a highly marketed professional athlete that people come to know, right? She's going to be one of the, if everything keeps on this trajectory, she'll be one of the most marketable female athletes, women athletes, professional sports, I think.
Last thought for you, Chip. This is not just a Paige Bueckers tournament. We talked about the teams. Anything else you are particularly looking forward to watching when the action gets underway on Friday?
Yeah, I want to see South Carolina. Don Staley's just done a remarkable job with that program, and I think they won it in 2017 is right. But to get that second one, and then if you did that, in this one with Stanford being the defending champion here, and UConn with Paige Bueckers and all the hoopla that if South Carolina emerges as the champion, you'll say, you know what, that was a special team. So I'm really excited to kind of see them up close in person.
I agree. I think it's going to be a great Final Four. I'll be there. Looking forward to it on Friday and then again on Sunday. Chip Scoggins, looking forward to reading your Paige Bueckers story as well later on this week. Thanks so much for joining me here today, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Mikey.
Good stuff from Chip, and a good reminder here, too, that even if you don't have tickets for Final Four this weekend, a lot of free events going on, stuff at the convention center. There's a free open practice on Saturday between the 2 championship teams. Lots to do to kind of be part of that atmosphere, because this should be a pretty cool thing, especially after 2 years where we didn't have a ton of these big events. I mean, we had so many of these things happening, and then COVID hit, and now this feels like one of the first real big things we're having back here after reopening. So you should check that out if you get the chance. Let's move on quickly. U.S. World Cup qualifying. They lost 2-0 to Costa Rica, like I said, but didn't really matter. All they had to do was avoid losing by 6, and they were in, so they are in. Didn't make it in the 2018 World Cup, so back into the cycle. They'll find out who they play later on, but into the draw, into the round of 32, and into that qualifying stage. And so we'll see how they go from there. It was a pretty solid qualifying run. I didn't watch every single match, but you had to feel pretty good about where they were. I mean, there's ups and downs and all of it, but throughout it all, I felt like they played. They saved some of their best soccer for the moments they needed it the most, and kind of came through when they needed to. So I feel pretty good about where they are heading into the World Cup. I don't know if this is quite their time to break through and get out of group play. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. We're going to have to see what the group looks like first, but the future of U.S. soccer a lot brighter than you could have said 2-3 years ago, I think, before this qualifying stage happened. So good work by the U.S., and then we'll see how far they can get once we see the group later on. Patrick Peterson coming back to the Vikings, reportedly a more modest contract than the one he had a year ago, but he kind of broke the news on a podcast, not this one, pretty rude. The All Things Covered podcast, he broke the news on Wednesday, said, I'm going to stay put where I'm at. There's a good group of guys in the locker room, Harrison Smith being one of the ones I'm very close to. Just felt it was right to be here, grind with those guys, and try to all come together for that common goal. But yeah, the contract, just reading from the Star Tribune story, Ben Gessling reportedly worth $4 million, can make another $1 million in incentives. Last year, his deal was an $8 million deal in free agency, so, probably owing to age and things like that, where he is in the market. Peterson, 31 years old now, not able to what he said, back up the Brinks truck anymore with his contract, but still a big get for the Vikings. They need cornerback depth, they need cornerback help, and this, he slots into that starting lineup, and it makes you feel a lot better about where they are with that. I know it feels like getting the band back together is still the real off-season message from the Vikings, but Patrick Peterson's one of those guys that I wanted them to bring back. I thought he was good last year when he was on the field. I thought they didn't have a lot outside of him going in that way, so to get him back, to have his production, that just solidifies things and it makes you feel better about where they are headed in 2022. So good move for them. Good move to get him on a modestly priced deal. Relatively speaking, seems like a win for both parties. Let's finish with the cooler. Odd timing on another contract extension, another contract fulfilled for, this time, the Minnesota Wild. Alex Goligoski signs a 2-year extension, $4 million contract. Again, not as hefty as the deal that brought him in here, the 1-year, $5 million contract that brought him in here. He's been pretty good this year. He's a plus 34 this season. He's got 28 points, 26 assists, 7th best plus minus in the NHL, but he's been a healthy scratch the last 2 games. The Wild trying to reconfigure its defensive pairings. They made an addition at the trade deadline. They're trying to, they got a decent amount of defensive depth, trying to figure out what their best 6 are. But it's been surprising to me to see Goligoski scratched based on how well he had been playing this year. You don't know if he's dealing with something, injury-wise. He's nursing something. They're just trying to give him a little rest from the grind, things like that. That could be it. But just knowing that he had been a healthy scratch and then seeing this contract extension was a little bit jarring to me, just because, I was starting to wonder, is Goligoski, is he falling out of favor? Is he really going to be here that much longer? Because he was signed to ostensibly, pair up on that top defensive pair with Jared Spurgeon, and whether that's the plan going forward or not, I don't know, but odd timing, I guess, is how I would phrase this. The guy's been a healthy scratch, and then all of a sudden you announce a contract extension, but maybe there's more to it. Maybe he'll be back in that lineup soon, and then it will make sense. But for right now, it was a little bit of a head scratcher to me. That will do it for today. Nick Delorier, who was originally scheduled to be on today's show, will be on tomorrow's podcast. New Wild forward. Should be a fun conversation with Nick Delorier, so looking forward to that. Thanks so much for joining me here today. Tons coming up in the next week as well as we talk women's Final Four. Twins opening day is a little less than about a week away now. So much going on. Frozen 4 next week, so there will be no shortage of great stuff to talk about. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Be back at it again on Friday.